Psalms, Summer in the Psalms. And I love this idea, this concept of Psalms. Last fall, I went to log into my Facebook, and it was all in Vietnamese. And I don't know what happened, but somehow I got hacked, and my entire account was in Vietnamese. I could not read it. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't even figure out how to get into it. And somebody was posting from it. Someone had taken over my Facebook. And I just don't know what happened. I spent time trying to get it back. I had to read through all the fine print and figure out, what do you do when this happens? And so for about 10 days, my whole thing was in Vietnamese. And finally, I had to upload my ID. I had to set up two-factor authentication. I had to talk with the Meta people. And finally, I was able to recover it. I didn't think I ever would. And it got me thinking about this question: how many times have you stopped and read all of the fine print when you've seen this screen? Yeah, you're laughing because you're like, never. I never read all the fine print, right? Exactly. Let's just be honest. You just click, I agree. Because oftentimes you're like scrolling just to get to the end, and then you're like, I agree. Like nobody's reading that, right? And that's what I do too. I've never stopped to read this. I just click, I agree. I may have, given away my kids. I might be sending half my paycheck to someone, or I might have changed my own Facebook to Vietnamese. I don't even know. And so it's fascinating that you don't read the fine print. In fact, statistically speaking, over 99% of people have become desensitized to this screen and simply click, I agree. They don't read it. We see it. It's become such the norm in our culture that we see it and we just go, yeah, and we just click. Now, I think we sometimes read the scriptures that way as well, that we skip over some things. And sometimes our approach to the scriptures is, I love the overall idea, but we don't take the time to study the fine print and how it might actually impact our lives. And so today, as we read the verses that we're going to read from the Psalms, I want to invite us to take the posture of a Georgia school teacher named Donalyn Andrews. Doesn't she look happy? Wouldn't you want her to be your school teacher? And so she has this, she seems so kind. She's, teaching algebra or something. And she's just decided 5 years ago that she would do something. She decided, I'm not going to ever click I agree without fully reading all of the terms and conditions. I am going to read all of the fine print. I'm never going to click something unless I read all the terms and conditions. Now, she does very little else in her life besides read terms and conditions at this point. But she has stuck with it. And she determined this would be a lesson for my students that to show them to pay attention in life, or the world would take advantage of them. And wouldn't you know it, she was booking a vacation for herself and some friends. She decided to read through the travel insurance, and she got to the end of the document. And at the end of the document, it said this: if you're still reading this, please contact us and we will give you $10,000. It was just buried in the fine print, and no one had ever taken him up on it because no one had ever read the fine print, right? And this isn't just a happy teacher. This is a $10,000 richer happy teacher, right? That's a different level of happy. And she found something most people never would because she was willing to do the work that most people aren't willing to do. Now, I wonder when it comes to the scripture, what it might look like to pay attention to the fine print. Well, we're going to read a psalm today, and maybe you've never read these verses before, or maybe you've heard these verses before, and you've just become a little bit desensitized to it because you've heard it so many times. And my prayer today, I think if we can lean in and pay attention to this, no matter what our previous experience is, my prayer is that we could find some $10,000 moments hidden in these verses. And so we're starting this series called Summer in the Psalms. We're looking at the book of Psalms, which is a collection of 150 songs that are written over a period of 900 years. Oftentimes, it's kind of thought in common culture like, well, King David wrote the Psalms, right? Well, he wrote a lot of the Psalms, but there's a lot of Psalms that are written by other people. Asaph and Moses even wrote some Psalms. And so it spans some 900 years. Sandwiched in the middle of our Bible is this songbook, and it's filled with these verses and choruses that capture the human experience. With each lyric, we're reminded of this important lesson. We're not alone. That we are not alone. That each one of us has been created on purpose for a purpose. There is a soundtrack to our life that God has written. And so there's actually different soundtracks within the Psalms. There's different genres of music. You've got songs of lament. You've got songs of thanksgiving, songs of wisdom, songs of praise. And there's also a collection of these songs known as the Psalms of Ascent. the Psalms of Ascent. These psalms are songs that the Jewish pilgrims would sing to each other as they made their way to Jerusalem on special occasions throughout the year. And they would sing these songs as they ascended to Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem sits up high, and when you travel to Jerusalem, you've got to go up to Jerusalem. And depending on where you lived, there's a lot of walking that took place. If you lived in Nazareth, that's roughly 65 miles from Jerusalem. That's a 5 or 6 day trip for most people. If you lived in Capernaum, 7 or 8 day trip because they're walking, they're making this trip on foot. A few years ago, I went with a bunch of our students on a mission trip to Bayou La Battery, Alabama. Okay, let me just tell you something. Southern Alabama in mid-July, gross. It's like walking through warm water every day. It's just horrible. But the trip down there, right, we had 60 kids. We loaded them into 5 vans, and we drove to Alabama. That took us 2 full days. I can't imagine traveling 7, 8 days on foot and only getting 60 miles. I mean, it's unbelievable. And most Jews would do this 2 or 3 times a year, and they would travel together as families or oftentimes as villages even. They'd make their way to Jerusalem on a journey together. Now, here's a couple of things that we can learn from this. Number 1, all of us are on some journey in life. Isn't that true? Your life could be described as a journey. We're all on some kind of a journey. And maybe it's a journey of connecting with God. Maybe you're on a journey of trying to fix a marriage. Maybe you're on a journey of trying to fix a relationship with a child who's become estranged. Maybe you're on this journey of parenting teenagers. You're like, it was easy when they were younger, but man, something flipped when they became teenagers. Maybe you're on this journey of being single or a journey of getting your finances in order. Maybe you're in this journey of rebuilding your life after something has caused it to be broken. Maybe you're in this journey of dealing with your mental health. Or maybe you're just on a journey of discovering what faith is. Maybe, you're like, man, everything in my life is actually going really well. It's going really good, and I should be experiencing the best that life has to offer. And yet, even though my career is going good, and my family's great, marriage is great, kids are great, I feel empty. And so I'm longing for more. So maybe you looked up Riverway, you Googled it, right? Help me figure out there's something more to life, and you wandered in, or you're watching online. And you're just trying to figure out this journey of faith, God, church, whatever label you want to attach to that. All of us are on this journey of some kind. And here's what's true about every journey. All of us need help along the way. We're all on a journey of some kind. None of us can do it alone. We're all on a journey. We all need help of some kind. And one of the songs that the Jewish pilgrims would sing as they made their way to Jerusalem was this Psalm 121. They would sing it as they made their way up the hills and the mountains to Jerusalem. And the opening phrase is amazing. I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? This is an interesting statement followed by an interesting question. I look to the mountains. Does my help come from there? So let me give us a little context. Even though Jewish people would travel together as families or in groups on their way to Jerusalem, it was very common for people to experience a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear as they traveled because they're traveling on foot in the wilderness, and there is a lot of unknowns. Not only are there people who could rob you, there were wild animals, there were just a lot of unknowns traveling on foot for that long, a lot of uncertainties in the journey. Now remember, this time period, there's no cars, there's no buses, right? No air conditioning, no running water, no law enforcement. There's no 7-Eleven, there's no Big Gulp Slurpees. They can't get that on the way. No urgent cares, no cell phones, no hand sanitizer. A lot can happen when you're on a journey traveling through hills, traveling through mountains, traveling through wilderness. And of course, you don't need me to tell you this because as humans, we often experience fear and anxiety, and mostly around what is unknown. That's where our fear and anxiety comes from is we look ahead and we go, there's something up ahead that is unknown. If only I knew, I wouldn't have this fear. If only I knew, I wouldn't have this anxiety. But the fear of the unknown, that's this journey called life. And the reason is because the unknowns are so hard for us to wrap our minds around sometimes. And right now in our own life, in our own season, there's a lot of unknowns in our culture. There's a lot of unknowns in our own world. There's a lot of fear and anxiety in regards to the economy and the unknowns around that and what's going to happen, right? There's a lot of fear and anxiety surrounding a bunch of social issues that impact our relationships with each other. There's a lot of fear and anxiety related to racial tensions and political division. And there's a lot of fear and anxiety around the rise in addictions and loneliness and poor mental health. There's a lot of anxiety and fear surrounding the future of our kids. And many of the previous cultures that lived in the land of Israel worshiped other gods on that mountain. They worshiped other deities. They could still see the altars and the monuments that stood along the path up to Jerusalem. Think about that. They'd say, I look up to the mountains. I can see the altars and the monuments of these other gods. Does my help come from them? And whenever there's fear, it's natural as humans to point to someone or something that we think will solve that problem or fix the problem. And we try as best as we can to identify the solution. If we could just listen to the right doctor or the right scientist, then we wouldn't have this fear, this anxiety. If we just elect the right politician, if we could just pass the right legislation, if we could just follow the advice of the right author of a book, if we could just invest in the right stocks, or if we could just find better therapists or psychologists. Our thinking tends to be, if we could just find the right, fill in the blank, then our fear would go away, our anxiety would go away. We could solve that. And so the Jewish people would make their way up to Jerusalem and they would sing together, I look up to the mountains, where there are lots of altars and monuments to other gods and other deities. I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from them? And they ask that rhetorical question, and the implication, of course, is no. And the song continues, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. I look up to the mountains. I look up to the hills. I look up to the altars and monuments of these other deities that have come and gone. Does my help come from any of that? No, my help comes from the Lord who made all of it. He made all of it. My help doesn't come from the mountains. I'm looking to the one who made the mountain. And my help doesn't come from the other gods who stand on the mountains. I'm looking to the one who made the mountain. And what a game-changing shift in perspective. Wouldn't it be amazing if for you and I, whenever we are facing fear or uncertainty, we could get into the habit of reciting the words, the lyrics of this ancient song? When I'm afraid, I look to the doctors. I look to the scientists. There's so much unknown. I look to the authors. I look to the politicians. I look to the CEOs. I look to the economists. I look to the stock market. Does my help come from them? No, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He's bigger than all of it. That's a big statement. Think about that. He created heaven and earth. I don't know if you've ever heard of the New Century Global Center. This is in China. It's a massive facility. It's about 19 million square feet, so a little bit bigger than Riverway. And think about this, 420 acres of floor space. That's unbelievable. It's 4 times the size of Vatican City. It has a couple hotels, an IMAX theater, a water park. It's got a church, a bunch of stores, a restaurant, and an artificial sun to produce light and heat. It's the largest building in the world. It took 3 years to build. It's our biggest accomplishment from an architectural standpoint as human beings. Yay, us. All right. It's great. So think about this. When you think about that, let me ask you this. How big and powerful and majestic do you need to be to create heavens and earth? Think about this. The New Century Global Center is in a city called Chengdu. It's a city of 16 million people. And that city is in the country of China, which is one of 195 countries in this planet. And then this planet is just one of 100 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy. That's pretty big. The Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years from one side to the other. So that means you turn on the lights, it takes 100,000 years before the light hits the other side. God created all of that. He's so big, he's so vast. And if you ever doubt God's greatness, you need to do what the Jewish people would do as they traveled up to Jerusalem. And they'd camp out at night and look up at the stars, and they'd see the stars twinkling in the sky, and they'd say, I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? No, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. They would remind themselves of how big and how vast and how powerful God is. He made it all. He created all of it. He's so big, he's so capable, and when he did, he didn't strain and he didn't groan and he didn't struggle. He just spoke. And when he created, he just said, let there be light. And there was light, and the universe lit up. Light is fast. It travels at 186,000 miles per second. Think about that. That's slightly faster than some of you drive to work in the morning. But it's unbelievable. When most of us think of light, we think of the sun. The sun is perfectly placed. It's 93 million miles away from the earth. You're like, yeah, that's great. No one really cares about that, but it's important. If it were 93,000 miles away from the earth, we'd have a serious problem, right? SPF 50 would not cut it. In fact, if it were 193 million miles away from the earth, we'd have problems. It'd be colder than a Vikings game in January. It's perfectly situated, and we don't think that much about it, but it's just sitting there 93 million miles away, a massive energy-producing light, because at one point God said, let there be light. The sun is so bright, it's so hot, that if center point energy ran it, it would take the gross national product of the United States, the sum total of all of our wealth as a nation, for 7 million years to power the sun for 1 second. That's a powerhouse. Think about that. When we look at the universe God created, it's so big that we don't measure it with a yardstick or a tape measure that we picked up at Home Depot, right? We measure it with a light year. A light year is 5.88 trillion miles. That's what scientists and smart people and astronomers use to navigate their way through the vastness of what God has created. And the Jewish people would sing, God, we look up to the mountain. We look up to this path, and we're so familiar with this trail, and we take it 2 or 3 times a year, and we look up to the mountains, and there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of unknown, and we look up at the gods and the altars and the monuments of the deities that have come and gone. Does our help come from any of that? No. God, our help comes from the Lord, who made it all, who made heaven and earth. My help comes from you. After coming to this recognition that this is all created by God, they would arrive at this conclusion. God is the source of our security. God is the source of our security. I look to the mountains. My help doesn't come from there. My help comes from the one who made the mountain. And the song would continue and remind them of God's provision and protection in their lives. He will not let you stumble. The one who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never slumbers or sleeps. Now, that's important. Think about this. Every day, you and I need somewhere between 7 and 9, some of us 12 hours of sleep, right? To refuel and replenish and recharge ourselves. If we don't do that, we will hit a wall. It's a daily reminder that you and I have limits. Our physical body has limitations. The world record for the most time without sleep is held by a guy named Randy Gardner. Back in 1964, when Randy was 17 years old, he stayed awake for 11 days and 25 minutes without nodding off. That's impressive. You have a story in the Old Testament where in the nation of Israel, in their history, where there's a prophet named Elijah. And he's kind of having this duel with a bunch of the prophets of this god called Baal. And he challenges them and says, let's build an altar, and we'll each pray. You pray to Baal, I'll pray to the God of Israel, and whoever lights the altar on fire will be the true God that we will all worship. And they agree to this challenge, and they start trying all of these things and dancing and calling on Baal, come and light this altar, and all of these things, cutting themselves even. And the whole time, Elijah sits back, and he's got like Old Testament trash talk. He's like, Where's your God? What's going on? Perhaps he's using the bathroom. And then he says this, maybe he is sleeping. Maybe he is slumbering. Maybe he's taking a nap, and so he's just, you just got to wait, and he'll come back after the nap, and then he'll be able to answer your prayers. It's so fascinating because the song of ascent, the song that ancient Israel would sing, reminds them God never takes a nap. He's never nodded off. Throughout all of human history, he has been awake and aware of what's happening and unfolding in our world, and that he is aware of what is unfolding in your life and in my life. He knows it all. The song continues, the Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. God watches over you. He watches over me. His understanding of us is limited. He knows all about us. The Lord himself, he doesn't slumber. He's watching over you. He sees you. He knows the journey that you're on, and he knows the help that you need. He knows our strengths and our weaknesses. He knows our thoughts and our fears and our insecurities. He knows our problems. He knows what brings us joy and what devastates us. He knows who is for us and who is against us. He knows the difficulties that are on the path ahead of us, the pitfalls. He knows every decision we make. He knows what is best for us. He knows what is destructive for us. He knows where we're at in life. God knows all about us and watches over us. Think of how powerful this is for the Jewish people as they travel to remind themselves, God, you've been faithful in the past. You've been faithful in the past. You continue to watch over us. If you think about the history of this nation, many times throughout Israel's history, different tribes and different nations and different people groups have tried to crush the nation of Israel. Not just one person here or there, but the entire nation of Israel. And it's never worked. There certainly have been long seasons when Jewish people have been scattered, but they've never been annihilated. This nation that's just a little bit bigger than New Jersey on a map has somehow survived thousands of years of difficulty and turmoil and challenges. And even at the writing of this psalm, the Jewish people would sing and remind themselves, the Lord watches over us. He sees us. He doesn't slumber. He knows where we're at. He stands beside us as our protective shade. We are not forgotten. And then it would continue. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord keeps you from all harm and watches over your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever. Now, every day of this journey called life, we're faced with uncertainty, right? There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. How do I navigate my loneliness? How do I get through the changing seasons of marriage? How do I overcome my addictions? How do I move past this divorce? How do I fix my personal finances, care for aging parents, guide my children? How do I improve my career or manage my anxiety? All of us are on a journey, and all of us need help along the way. And the bigger the mountains are in life's journey, the more challenges and the more unknowns that we face, the easier it is to try to find ways to numb our fears and our insecurities. And to try to numb the pain. We do things in different ways. Maybe you take a walk and hit the gym. You're like, I'm just going to do some extra reps. That's what I'm going to do. Or maybe for some of you, you binge watch TV. The average American watches 5 hours a day. And is there anything worse than when Netflix checks on you to see if you're still alive? Like, hey, you still watching this? Netflix might as well just say, go outside, get a life, you know? Maybe you swing by the liquor store, you do some online shopping. Maybe for you, you just overwork and you try to excel and achieve more. Or maybe you just hop onto social media and just doom scroll, right? And pretty soon, 3 hours later, you're just looking at vacation pictures of someone you've never met. You're like, how did I get here? And the truth is, sometimes it's just you snap at your kids or the people closest to you, or maybe you overeat or you overstress. Or as humans, we're inundated with so many self-help books, podcasts. We've just been brainwashed to believe when there's a mountain in front of us and we're on this journey and we need help, we can be our own solution. Again, if you just find the right thing to fill in the blank to help you, fix our own problems. And my tendency is to look at the things that have been created and think that they will offer all the solutions to all the things that I'm facing. Now, certainly there's some helpful things along the way, but here's what this psalm encourages us. Instead of constantly going to God and telling him, God, I'm filled with fear, I'm filled with anxiety, there's too many unknowns on this mountain. The Psalm of Ascent reminds us that we can actually look at the mountain and be reminded how big our God is. We don't have to go to God and tell him how big our mountain is. We can look at the mountain and be reminded how big our God is, because he's the one who created it all and he holds it in his hands. And when we read these verses, the Lord keeps you from all harm. Here's what it's easy to think. It's easy to think, that's not true. I've been putting my trust in God and I've still experienced harm in my life. So it's important for us to understand how the Jewish people would have sung this song. Their understanding wasn't that God is going to prevent all harm. Their understanding was, God, you will preserve us through the harm that this life throws at us. You will preserve us. There's an eternal perspective that says you will preserve us. This song is not a promise that harm would never hit. This is poetry to remind them where to put their trust when it does. That's different for each of us. Sometimes it means he gives us wisdom to navigate life's challenges. Sometimes it means he surrounds us with people to encourage us when we need it the most. Sometimes it means he gives us strength to endure what we're going through. I want God to just, when something's hard, just pick me up and carry me over it. And oftentimes what God does is give me the strength to get through it. And sometimes he heals or he provides or he does something supernatural. Sometimes he convicts us of sin and he redirects our path. When Riverway Church began, I've been tracking with you guys since the beginning. And man, it was just a handful of friends. It was just a dream that was burning in the hearts of your pastors. And there were no resources. There were no facilities. There were no crowds of people showing up, right? They stepped into their fears. And here's what they had. They had a dream, but they also had a lot of unknowns. There was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of unknown. Like, how is this going to come together? Why will people show up? Like, where do we go? From day one, it's just a lot of unknowns. And here's what's amazing. In every season in the life of Riverway Church, he's brought people together. In every season in the life of Riverway Church, he has moved on the hearts of individuals to sacrifice financially. He's sparked vision in people to step up and volunteer. He's opened doors to build facilities and welcome more people. He's created bonds and relationships between people. In every season, people step up to lead and to serve. Every hurdle that's been faced, every challenge that's been encountered, he's brought the right people together to lead through those difficult times. It doesn't mean there were never difficult times. It just means that God preserves through it. And so this is the song. It's like, God, I look at the mountain and I don't know how we're gonna get there. Does my help come from there? No. My help comes from the Lord who made it all. You hold it all in your hands. And so, let me ask you this before we close. What are the challenges you're facing? What's the journey you're on right now? What does the mountain of anxiety and fear and unknown look like in this particular season of your life? What are the mountains that are causing you fear and anxiety? Where do you feel overwhelmed? And it's so tempting to look right in front of you and go, God, I'm trying to find help right here by something that I can see. May you remember the words of this ancient song. I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let you stumble. The one who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never slumbers or sleeps. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon at night. The Lord keeps you from all harm and watches over your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever. Wouldn't it be amazing if in the middle of the unknown, if in the middle of the anxiety and the fear, we learned to just recite the lyrics of this ancient song? God, I'm in the middle of this, and I'm just filled with fear and anxiety, and I just don't know how this is going to work out, but here's what I can tell you. I look at everything around me. Does my help come from there? My help comes from you. You're the one who has made it all. You're so big. You're so vast. You're so powerful. God, it doesn't mean hard times aren't going to come, but I just know that you'll preserve me through it. You'll guide me every step of the way. What if we just got in the habit of just reminding ourselves of the lyrics of this song? And maybe for you, you've never considered finding hope in God. Maybe for you, you're trying to figure out this whole faith thing. Maybe that's the journey that you're on. And if I could be so bold as to summarize the scriptures back to back, cover to cover, it's this. God's building a family and he wants you in it. And that's the reality. And the truth is, you and I were created to exist in loving community with God and each other. From the first human beings to every one of us, that's why we were put on this planet. So we could experience loving community with God and loving community with each other. And yet from the first human beings to every one of us today, we said, hey God, I think I'm gonna do it my own way. Thanks, but no thanks. And it caused a lot of brokenness between us and God, and shocker, us and each other. And so at the right time in human history, God sent Jesus into the world. And Jesus comes and he says, hey, I'm gonna show you what God is like, and I'm gonna restore the brokenness that you have with God and the brokenness you experience with each other. But to do that, you gotta let me be the leader of your life. You gotta live. I want to take your sins and your brokenness and your shame, and I want to exchange that for wholeness, and community, and love. And so Jesus took all of our sin upon himself. He allowed himself to be put to death, and when he died, our sin died with him. And his body was laid in a tomb. And then, according to multiple eyewitnesses, this isn't just legend or myth, hundreds of people saw Jesus alive again, which means death is not the end. There's more to this life than this life. And you and I have been invited to be a part of God's family. And he wants to wipe the slate clean and become the leader of our life. When we do that, what we can experience is the truth of this song. God, I look to the mountains. Does my help come from there? No, my help comes from you who created it all. So if you're here today, if you're watching online, and you want to say yes to that invitation, would you just make this prayer your prayer? God, please forgive my sins. Forgive me, God, for the times I've walked away from you, and I'm so grateful you never walk away from me. God, I want to say yes to your invitation. Make me your son, make me your daughter. Help me to put my trust in you and to follow you as best as I know how from this moment on. I want you to be the leader of my life. And God, I pray for every one of us who do our best to follow you day in and day out. But the truth is that we can get so caught up in all of the things that are taking place in our own life. And we get filled with fear and anxiety and the unknowns. And so I pray that in those seasons on our journey, when we face a mountain, when we face fear and anxiety, that we would be reminded of the words of this song, that our help does not come from what is immediate, that our security is found in the one who created it all. And God, that you would give us the peace and courage to continue to move through those seasons and find our security in you. And as we do, may our lives point others to you. Pray all of this in your name.